As customary and for the bulk of our trainings and technical assistance, today's training will be recorded so that your fellow school food authorities and coworkers who could not attend today's training can listen to and learn from today's training at a later date. It also serves as a reference for you. And so with that said, we ask that you keep your line muted throughout the presentation as to avoid recording excess background noise. Along the same vein, since today's training session is recorded, it will be posted to the OSCE website for later referencing, and then we'll also send that link out with the recording and these slides via email once that's ready. Next, given the nature of the varied content the team will be covering today, we hope that there will be plenty of questions for the team. There are no silly questions, and everyone is here to learn, so chances are your question and our answer is helping someone else on the call. Throughout today's presentation, we will be fielding questions through the chat feature, and we will provide many opportunities for questions and answers throughout the presentation, as well at the end of today's session. If you have a question as a team member is presenting, we encourage you to use the chat feature to submit those questions. And this also helps us ensure that you walk away from today's training feeling empowered to operate your programs. So the chat feature looks like a little chat bubble with a smaller orange marker at the top. You can see it here on the screen. I was going to send a quick hello, but it looks like some people have already used the chat. So hopefully you've been able to see those messages coming through. Um, and if you're having trouble with the chat function, um, and you don't see the chat icon for whatever reason, we found that the fix is sometimes a simple one. You simply just log out of the training and then use the link provided and log back in, and often that fixes the problem. If that doesn't work, make sure that your browser's updated. Sometimes that could also be an issue that we've seen in the past as well. And then lastly, for whatever reason the chat isn't working, you can always use your hand and come off mute and ask your questions live to us. Okay, still on the subject of the chat feature, as you submit your questions to us, a member of the school programs team will thumbs up your question in the chat. So this is your indicator that your chat has been seen and received by the team and that you'll receive an answer to the question. We may not get to it immediately, but rest assured we'll provide an answer. We may answer it at the end of that section, or we may save it for the Q&A session at the very, very end, or we may answer it directly into the chat. And then there are several opportunities for engagement, interaction, and reflection worked in today's training to help break up the heaviness of the content so that we have an opportunity to hear from you today. So we ask that you be present with us today and welcome and encourage you to participate in interaction, but also honor flexibility and participation. So although we want you to participate and have fun with us today, you're of course not required to. And then the last and final thing I want to share before we move on is that we know you'll be sitting with us for a few hours, but we'll have one break right in the middle so you can get up, move around, and give your eyes a break from the screen for a few minutes. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start with welcome and introductions, and then we'll do a quick icebreaker to get your brains thinking. And then the bulk of our training will be on content. Some of this content focuses on important policy updates, and the rest focuses on findings that we've had in ARs this year. So we take a look at the trends and what we see during ARs, and that helps inform what we're training you all on every summer. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a few pauses built in for Q&A with a final Q&A wrap-up session at the very end. And then finally, something new this year, we're going to end in breakout rooms where you get to meet your program specialist. So we have a few members on our team that I'm getting ready to introduce, but we thought it might be fun for you all to get to talk to them in a smaller setting, so you can pick their brain, learn something about them, or ask them any questions that you didn't want to ask in the larger setting today. All right, so let's meet the program specialist team. So you may see a few new faces here today, and everyone that you've seen here will be presenting at some point throughout this training. We have folks coming to us with a variety of backgrounds, from vendors and self-preps to different government agencies at the DC level, at the food service district level, to even the state agency level. So whatever you all may need help with, someone on this team is going to be able to help you. So let me introduce everyone. So I'm Alex Dobbs. I am the School Programs Manager within the Division of Health and Wellness here at OSSI. And then the NSLP and FFBP Compliance Manager is Lizette Wells. And once I introduce you guys, feel free to come off and wave just so everyone can see you. But of course, you can see their photos here as well. And then we have 4 compliance specialists. So likely you've gotten an email over the last couple of weeks introducing you to your program specialist. They're responsible for audits and your NSLP application, which we'll talk a little bit about today, and any training in TA that you need. So we have Ed Katowski, we have Kendra Wosh, we have Shanice Wall, and we have Megan Maurer. They are all of our compliance specialists. And then you will also see Nick Gear on this call. He is our program specialist with USDA Foods and Farm to School. There are a couple more members on our team, so not shown here is Dario Marias. He's our claims specialist for the school programs team. Although he's not presenting today, you all may know him from prior year's claims training, and he's the guy that approves your claims and ensures you all get paid, so his role is pretty important. And then we also have Sam Ullery. He's on our team that's not joining this call today, but he is our school garden specialist. So if you have a school garden, you may have worked with him throughout the year, or work with him in the year coming up. All right, so we're going to do a quick icebreaker poll led by Lizette to get everyone's brains thinking today.
Thank you, Alex. So today we're going to take a poll to highlight a couple of different areas. First and foremost, we have folks who have all different types of length of experience in the NSLP space. So we would like for folks to share how long they have worked in school food service. Next, we would like to know if you have previously provided or received support from another school food authority, also known as an SFA. And then last but not least, we are considering a more formal mentoring program in the near future. Therefore, we'd like to know if you're interested in providing or receiving support from another SFA. So on that note, I am going to go ahead and launch the poll. You can go ahead and start answering the questions. So the first question is going to be, how long have you worked in school food service? And just sharing with you all that the names are not recorded on this, so please go ahead and begin to answer that first question.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cleveland McClory. I am the operations manager here at Achievement Prep. And I have been working in food service for 1 year. I first introduced the food service program in charter schools when I came on board last summer. So just a quick heads up, I have a few other team members that I'm trying to get connected and get online so they can be a part of the training as well. So excuse our tardiness.
Thanks, Cleveland. Do you need me to share the link with you? I can send it. I can send it to you if you need it again.
Yes, could you? I think our our devices don't have Teams on it. We don't have Microsoft Teams access. So I think because I'm on my phone now. But if you could share the link, that'd be great, and we can try to hop on from our phones.
Yes, I will email. Someone from the team is going to send that right over to you.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
Wonderful. And I just wanted to follow up to make sure that everyone can see the poll. It is live. I do see lots of responses. So thank you, everyone, for answering those questions. Make sure you get to all 3 questions so that we can really gauge an interest in whether or not a formal mentoring program is something that folks would be interested in. Thank you. And I'm going to give a couple more seconds for folks to answer the poll. And I also see some stuff coming in the chat, so that's really cool. You guys are sharing how long you have been with school food service. And again, We have a wide range of experience on today's call, so we will be highlighting resources that will support all of the topics for today. So I am going to share the results of the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. Thank you so much for everyone that answered. And so I will now turn it over to Alex, who will discuss why school meals are important.
Thanks so much, Lizette. Wow, I saw in the chat someone's been here for 15 years. That's really awesome. And it looked like almost half of our folks joining us today have been working in school food service for over 5 years. So that's really great. It looks like we have a wide variety of experience on the call. And if you have been here for a while, I'm confident you're going to learn something new today. So this is how we always like to start our trainings with why are school meals important? So here at OSSI, we've adopted the use of the CDC's whole school, whole community, whole child model, otherwise known as the WISC model. And I hope the concept is not new to folks. We talk about it each year we do these trainings, as it is the foundation in which we work here at OSSI. The WISC model is student-centered, and as you can see here by the student in the middle of the green star, and emphasizes the role of the community in supporting schools, the connections between health and academic achievement, and the importance of evidence-based school policies and practices. So the WISC model has 10 components here in blue that working together support a student's health and wellness. So today we'll be focusing on nutrition, environment, and services component, but please know we sit within a division of health and wellness and collaborate often with those putting out policies regarding other components of of the WISC model, such as physical education, immunizations, and allergy management are just a couple examples. So in our division of health and wellness, we also know that healthy bodies and minds are the foundation of academic success. In your roles, you see this in person each day. The right nutrition supports a healthy body and mind, preparing students to be fueled and ready to learn. School meals are a critical component to students having that right nutrition. So while we dig into some nuances of the meal programs during our time today, please remember the reason we're doing so. It is to support students' healthy bodies and minds, which leads to academic success. So in the spring, OSSI released our 3-year strategy as part of our recovery to restoration. OSSI's vision is that DC learners of all ages and backgrounds are equipped with the knowledge and skills needed to pursue and thrive on the life path of their choice. Our mission is, as DC State Education Agency, we will set high standards, build educator and system capacity to meet those standards, expand educational opportunities for all learners with a focus on those underserved, and hold everyone, including ourselves, accountable for results. So our 7 strategic priorities are here, but our work greatly lies within foster student and staff well-being. So we promise to unapologetically support the physical, mental, and social economic health of students and staff by promoting safe, welcoming, healthy, and joyful learning environments. As leaders and champions of this work, we know that you see firsthand each day the impact schools' meals have on our students. You can tell when a student can't learn because they haven't had breakfast. As part of our recovery to restoration plan, we'll focus on nutrition and environmental services. So we will work to ensure that students have access to high quality, accessible meals regardless of their learning environment. So that could be in person, even using alternate serving models when applicable, during unanticipated school closures and over school breaks of 10 days or more, and for students at full-time virtual learning schools. We will support communication and promotion of meals to students and families, as well as promotion of additional food resources in the community. All right, so this year we're operating our programs as business as usual. So here are the major implications for SFAs, and this is going to look very, very similar to how you all served meals last year. Um, Okay, so at this time, we do not have flexibility to allow waivers for non-congregate feeding if school closes. But this is new, and this might even be new for our team here. We actually do expect that the national office at USDA in the fall is going to issue waiver flexibility for this school year. So if national office does that, OSSI would need to apply for it and be approved for it. But if OSSI is approved, we will provide guidance to all SFAs. And this could potentially give SFAs the flexibility to provide non-congregate meals due to unanticipated school closures. So again, we don't have this flexibility at this time. So right now, there's no waiver flexibility for the 23-24 school year. But if something happens in the fall, we will provide an update to you all. So this year, meals are provided to enrolled students only. This is the same thing as last year. SSO is only operated in summer months during unanticipated school closures or of 10 or more day breaks. If you are a non-CEP school, then you must determine student eligibility, including free and reduced price meal, so farm apps, application processing, and then counting and claiming process needs to have a student identifier. So that is most often folks do that using like a student roster or a POS system on the computer. And then for everyone this year, similar to last year, meals are claimed at the student eligibility rates. So participants in the CEP program claim meals at the free rate based on their CEP eligibility percentage. Non-CEP schools claim meals at the free, reduced, and paid rates. Um, Okay, so I wanted to show this handy chart showing how different programs can operate. So the National School Breakfast Program and the National School Lunch Program are available on operating school days, including academic summer school. Meals are provided to enrolled students only, and meals are free only to those eligible. The seamless summer option, or what we call SSO, is available only during summer break if there are 10 or more day breaks throughout the school year, or if there's an unanticipated school closure. It allows for, and then we also have the Summer Food Service Program, or what we call SFSP. It's available only during summer break if there's a break of 15 or more days during the school year and in unanticipated school closures.
I'm on here.
And then now I'm going to pass it back to Lizette to talk about NSLP resources.
Thank you so much, Alex, for all of that information about how we are going to move forward. And so as Alex mentioned, I will take over and share some NSL resources for you all. OSSI has transitioned from the previously used NSLP Google folder, and all NSLP resources are now found on the OSSI website. To locate these resources, please visit the OSSI website at www.osse.dc.gov. Once you are on the main website, NSL resources can be found here. We will begin by selecting topics from the drop-down menu at the top of the page. Then we will select health and wellness from the drop-down menu. And once you are on the health and wellness page, you can scroll down to the nutrition services section. Click the nutrition and food services programs link to display a myriad of topics related to the NSLP program. In the next few slides, we will provide screenshots of the steps that we mentioned here. So as I mentioned, here is the main page for the OSSI website. You will see here that the topic section is highlighted.
Yeah.
Select health and wellness from the drop-down menu. Once you are on the health and wellness page, you will scroll down to the Nutrition Services section and select the area that is highlighted here. This is an example of how various topics are displayed on the Nutrition and Food Service page. Topics listed here include procurement, food safety, CEP, and training resources. For our time here today, we will look at the NSLP subsection. SFAs can expect to find information for the area which they are selecting. This includes both federal and local resources as well as all pertinent templates. Both the master responsibility sheet and the calendar of deliverables were housed in the Google folder as well. Each of these documents provide an eagle-eye view of items that SFAs are responsible for annually and at specific times of the year. This includes claim submissions, the annual application, and verification documents. They have been updated, and we anticipate having them available on the website in the coming days. The master responsibility spreadsheet will be located on the website, and it contains an overview of various responsibilities each SFA is responsible for throughout the year. Please keep in mind that not all items may be applicable to your organization. The calendar of deliverables will also be located on the OSCE website, and this document provides an overview of due dates for various reports and claims that are due to OSCE. Again, please keep in mind that all of the items may not be applicable to your organization. And now we will take a look at some legislative updates. The first legislative update we'll talk about is universal free meals. The conversation around universal free meals is gaining support all around the nation. Universal free meals, school meals, is a policy that can be passed at the federal or the state level to provide free breakfast and lunch to every student. Universal free meals increases access to school meals and reduces the stigma for children who rely on free meals. In 2022, the Food Policy Council developed recommendations to bring universal free school meals to Washington, D.C., with the assistance of Stephanie Schmelzer, a graduate student at CUNY School of Public Health. Information for the district can be found on the website for the D.C. Food Policy and at the Washington Post. Taken from the presentation created by the D.C. Food Policy Council are some highlights from why universal free school meals is important in the district, but the case could really be made for free meals nationwide. Some of the benefits include increased access to school meals for students. Families who did not participate in the programs previously may opt to have their student take advantage of free meals that are being provided. Additionally, universal free meals can help reduce the stigma for children who rely on free meals for daily nutrition. Initiatives implemented during the public health emergency, as mentioned, have expired as of June 30th, 2022, and school must now return to normal NSLP operations. As Alex mentioned, some of these school waivers included provided free meals for all students during school years 2020 through 2022. Schools have now resumed collecting meal applications for students who don't qualify for free meals with the start of the 2022-2023 school year, and students who did not qualify for free meals were charged. This resurfaced challenges of the current system, including administrative and financial burdens for families, decreased meal participation in school meals now that families have to pay for meals, and the return of the previously mentioned stigma for children surrounding meals being provided for free. As we look at the benefits of free meals, universal free meals, they include improved academic achievement because food provided provides fuel for healthy minds. The meal pattern is designed to help contribute to students experiencing lower obesity rates, as well as consume more fruits and vegetables. Being fueled with healthy food can also lower the risk of behavioral issues due to lack of nutrition and energy. Lastly, students can experience a reduction in nutrition deficiency which can also be attributed to the meal pattern. As it relates to racial equity in the district, we see that Black and Latinx students experience food insecurity and face food insufficiency at higher rates than white students. For many students, school meals represent not only the bulk of the calories for the day, but they are more healthy options that they will consume during the course of the school day. Please be advised that this is strictly proposed legislation, and at this time it has not passed in Washington, D.C. If it is passed, SFAs will need to consider the following administrative implications. First and foremost, meals will be free to all students, and there will be no need to collect payment for denied or paid students. SFAs will be reimbursed at the 100% free rate for all claims. Free and reduced paid information is still needed from SFAs as this information is federally required. This information can be collected via either form application or other documents that help SFAs identify free, reduced, and paid information. In addition, standard claiming sites would still need to use rosters to submit claims with correct free, reduced, paid status. Increased participation for school breakfast and school lunch, given that families may participate, is another administrative anticipation of universal free meals. And lastly, a potential increase in meals prepared or ordered given the anticipated increase in participation is another administrative implication. Forecasting will be crucial to ensure that SFAs do not run out of meals. Again, this is all in the very early legislative stages, and OSSI will provide pertinent updates as they become available. On March 23, 2023, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also known as the USDA, released a proposed rule expanding the community eligibility provision, also known as CEP. CEP allows high-need schools to offer free breakfast and lunch to all of their students. This proposal lowers the identified student threshold, or the ISP, to 25%, thus increasing the number of schools that are eligible to participate in CEP. CEP increases students' access to school breakfast and lunch, and it reduces the administrative burden for SFAs. It increases operational efficiency, and it also combats household food insecurity. The comment period was open until May 8, 2023, and the final rule will be published this November. OSSI will provide updates to all eligible SFAs, as this will have a great impact for them. I will now turn it over to Alex to discuss proposed changes to the meal pattern.
Thank you so much, Lizette. So I think I have the final proposed rule to discuss today. So this one's based on the latest nutrition science and extensive feedback from our school meal partners. USDA's Food and Nutrition Service is proposing updates to the school nutrition standards in a few key areas to give kids the right balance of nutrients for healthy and appealing meals. So the goal here is to make the meal patterns consistent with the 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And the main focus of this proposed rule is on added sugars, milk, sodium, and whole grains. So the biggest changes in DC would be around added sugars and milk. Added sugars and sodium. So there's a proposal for weekly sugar limitations. So this would be something that would have to be included in the nutrient analysis, the same way that you include sodium, calories, and saturated fat. Also, it would include limits for specific items such as grain-based desserts, breakfast cereals, and yogurts. And then sodium has additional proposed reductions as well, which will be rolled out either over a 2 or 3 year period. I feel like we've been talking about sodium reductions for the last couple of years, but there's new sodium reductions proposed in this final rule. And so other two points in this rule, and the one point that's getting nationwide attention is over flavored milk. But while flavored milk is already unallowable in DC, it looks like USDA may be following suit and not allowing flavored milk nationwide and maybe just for certain grains. And then whole grains another area which would require more whole grains, but DC is already stricter here as well, and 100% of our grains need to be whole. I thought it'd be worth it to include these two things in case you guys are on any newsletters or email blasts, as these have been in the news a lot. They just wouldn't apply to DC because we're already ahead of it. And so I want to reiterate that these are all proposed rules. So the two that Lizette just talked about on universal free school meals, on the CEP threshold, and then on these revisions to the meal patterns are all proposed right now. But the reason why we're talking to you about them today is we want you to be aware of these rules that people are talking about. There's comment periods on. And so if they do pass, it won't be brand new to you all. So if OSSI sends out a memo or an email in the fall or in the spring, you're going to say, oh, I already learned about this in the summer, and it won't be brand new. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to Ed, who's gonna talk about 1-year-old legislation that actually did pass in DC.
Thanks for that, and Alex, and hi everyone. A piece of legislation that's been with us for some time is the Zero Waste Omnibus Act, and its most recent iteration was amended in 2020. What is the Zero Waste Omnibus Act? The Zero Waste Omnibus Act aims to create a zero waste law on par with other cities. The law looks to toughen rules around food waste and disposable utensils. One aspect of this law is aimed at addressing single-use, disposable food serviceware items such as utensils, straws, clamshell containers, cups, and bowls. The goal of the Zero Waste Omnibus Act is to reduce food and packaging waste in the district 80% by the year 2032. Effective January 2021, all district food serving entities, such as school cafeterias, are prohibited from automatically including disposable food service items in customer orders. So what does this mean for our school? It means that SFAs and contractors shall provide disposable food serviceware items only upon request. Meals should not include accessory disposable food serviceware unless specifically requested by the student. What are accessory disposable food service items? These items include straws, utensils, cups, and napkins. Students must request any of the items listed above if the item are kept behind the service line. A self-service station where students can select or decline foodware items independently is advisable. The flyer that you see here is tailored for schools, and you may have seen something similar in your local restaurant. We will be sending out an updated version as a follow-up to the training, as well as posting to the OSSI website. So there's more to come with the updated flyer in the coming days and months. You might ask yourself, are there any exceptions to this requirement? Certainly, there's always, I guess, an exception. Here are a few exceptions of where the rules would not apply. Meals served in the classroom, early childhood meals. This would include childcare facilities and students in pre-K settings, field trip meals, condiments such as mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, and hot sauce, and meals served to students with disabilities. An important note is food commonly eaten without utensils, such as sandwiches or wraps, would not qualify for the exemptions listed above, and disposableware items must only be provided upon request or at a self-service station. In summary, to implement the Zero Waste Act, the following criteria must be met. The act is required in meals served in the cafeteria. Accessory disposable food serviceware items must be available and not pre-plated or unitized within the meal. Food service staff must keep disposable food serviceware items either behind the counter or in a self-service area for customers to take on their own. It's important to note the Zero Waste Omnibus Act is not new and will be a part of all 2023-2024 NSLP administrative reviews. Last year's annual training covered the Zero Waste Omnibus Act, and we still observed a lot of issues during our 22-23 administrative reviews that resulted in findings. So please be mindful of the requirements and develop a plan for implementation this school year. Okay, we've looked and spent some time reviewing the Zero Waste Act requirements. So what do some of the solutions look like? Each of your locations is unique, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution to implementing the Zero Waste Act. But here are some examples that you should consider for the upcoming school year. You could implement a smart stock dispenser. There are many companies out there that offer this self-service solution where individual utensils are selected, and it's a great alternative to pre-wrapped cutlery. A second solution would be to implement a no-use plastic, meaning transitioning away from plasticware to metal or washable cutlery. Open usage area or kiosk where plasticware or metal utensils are kept. And just a side note, you might want to also consider eliminating straws in their entirety. One might ask, how can we implement the Zero Waste Act to reduce food serviceware? Training. Training your staff and students is critical to ensure your school community buys into the solution-based zero waste program, and a great first step. Secondly, you will need to develop a zero waste policy for your school, addressing how you will be in compliance with the Act. Then you might want to consider implementing some of these zero waste best practices. 1, communicate the Zero Waste Act requirements to staff, administration, parents, students, and especially the cafeteria workers. How? How can you communicate this? Through school opening staff trainings, back to school night, morning announcements, regular email communications are also a great way to get the word out. Before this new year, the new school year begins, hold staff trainings on the Zero Waste Act and requirements. Make sure to include solutions to reduce waste and protocols to be followed. Train your students through teacher instruction, morning announcements, parental reminders, cafeteria staff reminders, and gentle nudging at each meal period. To create awareness, hold a plastic-free lunch day with no utensils required. There's some additional thoughts in the flyer located here on how you can implement this. Now we'll transition to answering any questions you might have regarding legislative updates or the Zero Act Omnibus Act.
Thank you, Ed. All right, Yep. Okay, we have a few questions in the chat that I'm going to answer for y'all now. So the first question that came in is, will DC potentially adopt these earlier? I'm assuming that's about universal free school meals. Parents are quite vocal about these types of restrictions and have been advocating for them. The answer is we don't know. When this first gained traction, we thought potentially they would adopt it for this school year coming up, but they didn't have a hearing on it. So now we're thinking potentially this could be adopted for next year. Crazy things could happen. Council could pass legislation and gets adopted mid-year. We don't know, is the answer to that question. So I'm sure you all have seen it in the news. We're watching it closely. We've provided data. on it as well. And we will keep you updated the second we hear any more information on it. The next question is, does the proposed change for CEP include an increase to the ISP factor? Megan, can you go back to the CEP slide that shows, I think there's one CEP slide, if you can go back to it. Okay, let's just see. Megan, are you able to go back to specifically slide 25? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, so this is the CEP proposed rule, and the question here is, does the proposed change for CEP include an increase to the ISP factor? So the proposed rule is actually about the ISP factor. So right now, for a school to qualify for CEP, you have to have an ISP of 40%. That 40% gets multiplied by 1.6, and that becomes your CEP rate. The proposal here is that they would take that 40% and they would lower it to 25. So any school that has an ISP of 25 could qualify for CEP. That 25% would be multiplied by 1.6, and that would be your CEP rate. So the proposal here is just to lower that threshold. And I think I saw something that this might pass in the fall. So this will probably be, if I'm predicting the future, the first one of them that passes and is implemented. Okay, the next question here is on zero waste. So Megan, if you can go to slide 32. Okay, so these are the exceptions for zero waste. So there's a couple questions in here. The Zero Waste Act applies only to middle school, correct? So that's not correct. It applies to everybody except in these exceptions. So the times that this requirement does not apply is when meals are served in the classroom, if they're early childhood meals, so that could be child care facilities or to students in pre-K. We don't expect the early childhood to go up and have to get their own utensils. It doesn't apply to field trip meals. It doesn't apply to condiments and self-service stations, because we know if you have the condiments out, kids might go and take like 3 packages of mayo, which could then throw out the nutrient analysis. And then it doesn't apply to students served with disabilities. So these are the only exceptions. Otherwise, it does apply. So if you have kindergarten eating in the cafeteria, zero waste would apply to them. And then there's one specific scenario where foods commonly eaten without utensils, such as finger foods, won't qualify for the exception listed above. So let's say you have early childhood meals, or you're serving pre-K kids pizza and apple slices, and they don't need utensils. This wouldn't qualify for the exception, and the understanding is here is that they don't need utensils anyways to eat the meal, so you shouldn't just automatically give them a fork or spoon if they're not going to use it. So these are the exceptions for zero waste, but it does apply to everyone. The next question on zero waste is, does this include actual packaging for a vended meal? So Megan, if you'll go to slide 31. Okay, so the specific language here is that SFAs and contractors shall provide accessory disposable food service ware only upon request. And so what is accessory food disposable ware? And so it's disposable food serviceware, which would include straws, utensils, condiment cups and packets, cup sleeves, and napkins that's not used to hold or contain food. So the question here is, does it include the actual packaging for vended meals? And it doesn't, because the actual packaging for vended meals is containing the food, and so that doesn't count. All right, the next question here is also in zero waste. Are plastic straws that are packaged with juice boxes exempted? This is a question that I want to confirm with DOEE. So if you guys remember, years ago, there was a plastic straw ban in DC. So under the Zero Waste Act, plastic straws were previously banned. And so my assumption is that since they're plastic straws, they're not allowed and are not part of an exemption. I don't know any exemptions for the plastic straw ban, but again, that's not part of zero waste. And I will ask DOE and I will follow up with you guys on that one. Okay, the next question is also, I might have answered this on zero waste. So is pre-K still excluded from this? Yes, pre-K is excluded from zero waste, except if they are eating a meal that does not require utensils. So if they're eating a meal that's finger foods, thanks for showing the slide, that wouldn't qualify. And so I do think that's a little bit of common sense, but just know when you're training staff, if you have a scenario with a pre-K where they don't need utensils, we shouldn't automatically just be putting utensils in front of them, because more likely than not, they're not going to use them and it's going to go right into the trash. All right, we have a question on how is ISP calculated. So the way that the ISP calculated is the direct certification. And so what we do to calculate ISP is we take the number of kids that are directly certified, and that is your ISP percentage. Okay, will it increase the 1.6 factor? I don't believe so. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I don't think so. I think the only thing in legislation is the ISP percentage, lowering it from 40 to 25%. And then the last question, but are you allowed to give plates for pizza? This is back to zero waste. And the verbiage here is that accessory, I'll wait till you go one more slide back. Okay, so if you guys see on the second bullet for accessory food disposable ware, it lists everything that is considered accessory disposable food service ware. But the very last line there, it says that is not used to hold or contain food. So in this example, are you allowed to give plates for pizza? Yes, because the plate is holding or containing food. So that wouldn't count. You can use disposable plates, or if you guys have trays or something like that coming from your vendor, since it's used to hold or contain food, that's not part of the zero waste requirement. And then I'm just going to give, let's just give another minute and see if any questions come in. And then a question from Heather, not a question, but a comment. Without an increase to the factor from 1.6, there's a significant financial burden on schools that are eligible at the lower ISP rate. Agreed. Yes, it would require that the school pick up the difference if they have a very low CEP percentage. So it may not make financial sense to operate CEP, even if you are eligible. But we can keep our fingers crossed that universal free school meals passes in DC, and then the school wouldn't have to worry about making up the difference. So hopefully one day soon we can be talking about this legislation, and then it won't be on the school as a burden to make up that extra difference. Yes, so it says, can you explain that? I thought schools are already making up the difference. I think okay, so in CEP, whatever your CEP percentage is so let's say your CEP percentage is 70% of your claim will be free and the rest is paid, and it is up to the school to make up that difference. If universal free school meals passes in DC, then all of the meals would be served free, and DC government would be making up that difference. So it would be legislation where we make up that difference instead of the burden being on the school. And then there's one last question here. Can you provide an example of napkin waste? I'm assuming this is for zero waste. And I believe that it is saying that you can't pre-plate napkins. And so napkins can only be provided upon request. So what they don't want to see is that you have all the trays lined up and a napkin on every single tray, because maybe a kid doesn't need a napkin. And so Ideally, they can either request it or they go to one of the self-serving stations, such as I'll ask you to go to slide 34, Megan. Um, and this doesn't have a napkin example, but if you can see the example on the left, we've seen containers that you can pull a napkin from. And so if you have something like that, a kid can go grab their own napkin if they need it. Again, just to decrease the amount of waste, because not everyone might not use a napkin. And if you're giving it to everyone, some of those are just going directly into the trash. All right. Yes. So the last question before I let us all go take our, because we're just about an hour, so I'll let everyone take that 5-minute break. We typically do sport packaging with a napkin or a straw. So would a bucket with a sport packaging be acceptable as opposed to putting an individual one on top? So yes, a bucket with a spork is acceptable. I just want to remind everybody of the previous, oh, and great. Thank you, Megan. On this slide, you can see on the far right, there's a container where right here, they have reusable forks and spoons, but you could put sport packets in there or just disposable cutlery. And as long as it's at a self-service station, it's fine. So yes, you could put your sport packet that has a napkin in there. The tricky thing in that I want everyone to remember is that plastic straws are not allowed in DC. This was passed a couple years ago. So if your vendor is providing you a sport packet that also has a plastic straw in it, you should request that you need to request that they order a different type of cutlery for you. We cannot serve plastic straws in DC. This isn't part of the Zero Waste Omnibus Act. This was previous legislation that's been passed. And so I know a lot of folks have vendors that serve other markets. And so they might be providing the same sport packet that they provide in different states, but in DC, they are going to have to change what they're ordering to meet the requirement that they don't have that plastic straw. All right, so it's 10:26 here now. I'm going to give everyone just a 5-minute break to get up, grab some water or coffee, and we will start at 10. We'll start 10:32, and we will see you all in a couple of minutes. All right, everybody, welcome back from your break. I saw some questions come in the chat, so I'll just save any follow-up questions that come in about the subjects we already talked about for the end. So if you have questions on zero waste or CEP or any of those things, you can keep chatting them and we can circle back at the end. And then I just want to remind folks not to try to share your screen. It will take over the presentation, so just be mindful of the share button. Don't click it unless you want to share your screen with everybody. All right, I'm going to kick it to Shanice for our next section.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hi, I'm Shawnice Wall. I'm the program specialist here at OSSE and also the grant administrator for the school breakfast expansion grant. And in this segment of the annual training, it is dedicated to the breakfast showcase event, which is an activity under the school breakfast expansion grant. So the Breakfast Showcase event spotlights schools that are making a systemic impact with their grant funding. The two selected schools showcased today have been asked to highlight the various ways students have benefited from this grant so far. Before we get into the Breakfast Showcase event, I wanted to kick off our time together with a quick overview of the School Breakfast Expansion Grant. This grant currently awards $2 million in grant funds to 18 school food authorities serving students in grades pre-K through 12 at 104 schools. The purpose or the goals of this grant are to improve the quality of school breakfast, increase participation in the school breakfast program, ensure students are better prepared, ready to engage and learn in school, and of course, build healthier classrooms and communities. Grantees can use their funds in a number of different ways, such as purchasing meal service equipment, breakfast in the classroom bags, shelves on wheels, warmers, and more. Let's take a look at how the students of Apple Tree Early Learning Public Charter School are benefiting from their grant funding. I think we're having some audio issues. 1 second, sorry. Oh, you can hear? All right. That was very precious. Great work, Apple Tree team. Okay, so as you recall, one of the goals of the Breakfast Expansion Grant is to increase the student participation in the school breakfast program. One innovative strategy implemented by Mary McLeod Bethune Day Academy, PCS, was the purchase of a greenhouse. Their greenhouse was used for the purpose of growing fresh fruits and vegetables year round. Their students participated in the cultivation process and were provided a short preparation session for tasting to increase the consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables included in breakfast meals served. Excellent work, Mary McLeod team. I know that this was not an easy feat. So these were the brief highlights of the School Breakfast Expansion Grant and the end of our Breakfast Showcase event. Stay tuned to the Aussie website for future grant funding opportunities that can be used to improve your school meal programs. Thank you, and I'll hand you over to Ed now. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Janice. Now let's look at some alternative breakfast models required under the Healthy Schools Act. Here at Aussie, we know that healthy bodies and minds are the foundation of academic success. In your roles, you see this in person each day. And as Alex mentioned earlier, in the WISC model, the right nutrition supports a whole healthy body and mind, preparing students to be fueled and ready to learn. We talked about the importance of students participating in breakfast each year. However, our administrative reviews, we still observe schools falling short of HSA requirements at breakfast. School breakfast meals are critical components to students having the right nutrition. Here's a refresher of important highlights as to why it's important for students receiving breakfast at your schools each day. Improved academic performance. Students that are well fed are ready to learn. Ensure students are receiving a well-balanced diet to start their day and in turn, ready to learn. Schools may have fewer students to make trips to the nurse with stomach aches or other physical indicators of hunger. Students will also experience improved nutrition. Specifically, students with access to school breakfast have a better overall diet. Students who participate in school breakfast consume a wider array of foods than those that do not, or who may eat breakfast at home. School breakfast can also help students balance their calories over the course of the day. And lastly, school breakfast helps build lifelong healthy eating habits. While the Healthy School Act contains several aspects, today we're going to focus on the requirements for breakfast. Some HSA topics we'd like to review today are HSA breakfast requirements. Elementary schools must offer breakfast in the classroom, or BIC, each day. Middle and high schools must offer an alternative breakfast serving model each day. What are alternative breakfast serving models? BIC, grab and go, and breakfast after the bell. Best practices and strategies for increasing school breakfast participation. Alternative breakfast serving model annual subsidy, and breakfast in the classroom waiver. HSA requirements are as follows. The Healthy School Act, originally passed in 2010, ensures District of Columbia public schools, public charter schools, and participating private schools are a healthy place for students that support healthy minds and bodies. Requirements for the HSA include that breakfast must be offered free to all students. if more than 40% of the students at a school qualify for free or reduced price meals, and the school's current breakfast participation is below 75% of its average daily attendance, then elementary schools must offer breakfast in the classroom each day. Additionally, middle schools and high schools must offer alternative breakfast serving models each day. What are alternative breakfast serving models and what do they look like? An alternative breakfast serving model is a method of serving breakfast other than service in the cafeteria. BIC is one example of an alternative breakfast model where students are served in the classroom. A second alternative breakfast model is utilizing grab-and-go carts located in high traffic areas other than the cafeteria, such as school main entrance or where parents and bus drop-offs are located. A third alternative breakfast serving model is before the bell, which is access to breakfast both before and after the start of the academic school day. An example of this would be to have breakfast available before designated cafeteria service time and when students arrive late after the first bell. These models must be proven to increase student participation in breakfast relative to the traditional serving model of serving breakfast in the cafeteria. Alternative serving models, other than ones listed here, may be used but require approval by OSSE. OSSE will collect information about the alternative breakfast serving models that schools choose to implement via the annual subsidy application. Now let's review some best practices to help increase breakfast participation. A great resource is located on the OSSE website in the link here, the document highlights best practices to increase breakfast participation, as well as further defining the alternative breakfast models for workers new to the program. The main highlights of this resource are reworking menus through taste test and student votes on preference is a great way not only to engage your students, but also get their valuable feedback. Encourage students to participate by way of school administration, teachers, aides, and cafeteria workers goes a long way in increasing breakfast participation. And lastly, what we mentioned in the previous slides about alternative breakfast serving models, which are BIC, grab and go, and breakfast after the bell. Next, we'll look at alternative breakfast annual subsidies that most of you receive. In addition to the requirements that were previously mentioned, the HSAA created the annual subsidy of $2 per student for schools that serve breakfast via an approved alternative breakfast serving model. So if you have 500 students enrolled, your location would receive roughly $1,000. Once a school receives payment, these funds may be used to purchase equipment or supplies to operate the alternative breakfast serving model. Some examples of supplies include carts, bags, trash cans that may be used for grab and go or breakfast in the classroom. Schools are required to submit an annual subsidy application in order to receive the funds. This is done in conjunction with your annual NSLP application, which is currently going on now. Typically, we generate a report in January, which indicates which schools are eligible for the subsidy. If we are certain a school is serving breakfast via an alternative serving model and isn't indicated on their application, we'll follow up with you to ensure that the application is accurate so that you receive the subsidy based on your eligibility. Next, we'll review guidance behind waiver requirements and what criteria must be met. A link to the BIC waiver form can be found in the slide. Please be mindful of the following criteria when thinking about submitting a BIC waiver for the 2023-2024 school year. Only elementary schools may request of OSSI a one-year waiver for the BIC requirement. A waiver request must include a strategy that will enable the school to reach a breakfast participation rate exceeding 75% of its average daily attendance. BIC waiver requests are school specific and must be submitted to OSSI for each site via a written action plan. So if you're an SFA that has multiple sites, a plan needs to be submitted for each one of those sites. The plan must include the current serving model, justification, strategies that will increase breakfast participation, ways the school will promote breakfast, and applicable grades for the waiver is being requested. Schools that do not demonstrate incremental progress towards meeting the 75% participation rate will be required to implement BIC at the start of the next school year. Now let's have some time for some self-reflection and ask yourself some of the following leading questions. I'm going to give you about a minute or less to think about each one. And please feel free to drop it into the chat as well. Is my site in compliance with the HSA requirement? I can. My picture's over it, and now my screen's going crazy. Oh, whoops. Secondly, if not, how will I achieve compliance? If the waiver is needed, think about a plan to write the waiver. Thirdly, are we having any challenges? If so, how will we address them? And lastly, if you're an expert, would you lend a hand to another school that needed a thought partner? I gotcha. All right, great. So thank you for participating in this self-reflection. It's an opportunity for you to be able to ask yourself some of those important questions. Next, we'll look at the serving local requirements under the HSA Act. And my colleague and I will kind of go through this section together. But first, we want to look at items Give me one second. Okay, there are two items I'd like to point out on the slide. The first word is local, and the second term is unprocessed. Both as described by the Healthy Schools Act of 2010. These definitions are also included in the OSSI's Is That Local resource, which you all receive quarterly throughout the school year. Today, I'm going to say local to mean both locally grown and unprocessed. Serving local items has many benefits that we'll touch on today, but here are a few highlights. First, to connect schools and local farms with the objective of serving healthy ingredients, resulting in healthier meals. To improve student health, nutrition, and academic performance. To provide agricultural, health, and education opportunities, introducing students that may live in food deserts to new items and the opportunities to experience fresh local items. To support local economies and provide higher quality items. Now, we'll look at the importance of local items in the child nutrition program. There's plenty of research supporting the benefits of farm to school. The fact sheet here is one of my favorite resources for highlighting the benefits of farm to school for students, schools, families, and communities. One lesson we've learned through the pandemic is that local food is especially important when a national and global food systems are disrupted by large-scale events such as a public health emergency. Buying from local growers and processors not only supports our regional economy, it also helps schools have reliable access to produce, dairy, and proteins. Now my colleague Nick will highlight some information about the Farm to School grant.
Thanks, Ed. In 2022, DC marked 10 years of Farm to School. As a result, OSSI applied and received the 2022 USDA Farm to School or Farm to Child Nutrition Programs grant that seeks to provide a thorough third-party analysis of the last 10 years of farm to child nutrition programs in DC. What worked, where there are areas of improvement post-pandemic, and how to overcome barriers to entry for our SFAs in the areas of local food procurement and agricultural education. So really, this is just kind of a quick overview of showing you where we are at OSSI and some of the grants that we have federally that we are going to be administering. So you might be hearing a little bit around data collection, and it's really to provide us the ability to help you all, to help our SFAs, again, like overcome a lot of these barriers to entry for some of these farm to child nutrition program areas of focus. Additionally, as I said, data collection, this coming fiscal year, the USDA will also be administering a farm to school census. So the last one was 5 years ago. This census will really equip SFAs in the farm to child nutrition programs arena with data from schools around the country in similar sizes, similar socioeconomic areas that will really give us a look of folks who are participating in similar projects. Back to Ed.
Thanks, Nick. As mentioned in the previous key term slide, you'll want to be certain that you can answer the following questions when asked, is that local? First, I guess, was the food grown or raised in the following states in the diagram here? Did the food raised meet the unprocessed criteria listed above? Foods that are either unprocessed or minimally processed are nearest to their whole and raw and natural state. Items that we've seen, items that have been milled, cut, chopped, heated, pasteurized, blanched, cooked, and are considered processed and do not qualify. So canned black beans, canned tomato puree, or tomato or applesauce cups would not qualify as unprocessed. Next, we'll review how to submit your quarterly locally grown and unprocessed tracker. Here are the steps necessary to submit your tracker. First, when is your local tracker due? Submission dates are due quarterly throughout the school year with corresponding months and located in the table that you see here. You will receive an email notification with the local tracker spreadsheet and guide 1 month prior to submission, and a reminder 1 week before the due date. What is uploaded? Your locally grown and unprocessed tracking log with important information such as meal service date, so that's the date the item was served at your school, item and item size, number of cases and total pounds, a dollar value, and what meal service this item will be served, and the grower number. Where do you submit this information? You submit this information to the Aussie locally grown website at the address you see here. And why do we submit this? For the Healthy Schools Act, schools are reimbursed 5 cents per student per day when at least one component of reimbursable breakfast or lunch meal is comprised of locally grown and unprocessed food. SFAs are required to report to Aussie the local foods served as part of the school meals program using the locally grown and unprocessed food item tracking log. To ensure you receive 5 cents per meal, it's critical this information is sent on or before the due date. There are times throughout the school year that we do not receive the local tracker on time, and this can negatively affect your claims reimbursement as well as create findings at your administrative review. If you have a vendor, it's your responsibility to ensure your vendor is tracking local items and sending this information along on time. Best practices would be to highlight local items for breakfast and lunch in your monthly menu. If you have a vendor, review their menus 30 to 60 days before the menu month to ensure local items are being offered each day. Now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Nick, who'll review additional ways to highlight local foods.
Thank you, Ed. In addition to and in concert with calling out local items on your breakfast and lunch menus, there are a variety of ways in which SFAs can highlight local foods being served. It's important to think about foods that will be most popular among students, as well as innovative ways to add local ingredients into already established menus through taste tests, contests, or classroom integration. Possibilities are really endless, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Aussie's 2022 Local Foods Toolkit is a great resource with which to start. It's a short document, about 8 or 9 pages, highlighting ways in which every SFA and DC can get involved in farm-to-child nutrition program activities. You can find this resource on our website, and we will share this link in the presentation after this presentation is over. Next slide. And then while I have you all, I didn't formally introduce myself, but I'm the USDA Foods and Farm to School Specialist here at Aussie. And as that, I oversee the favors system. And many of you all are very familiar with the favors or DoD Fresh ordering system. In the favors portal, SFAs will have the ability to directly spend their planned assistance level or PAL monies to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables through the DoD Fresh ordering system. These dollars are used to purchase raw goods through the DoD approved vendor, Seashore, at the moment. They also do have local options, and they will filter out the local for you, so you can add that directly to your local and unprocessed tracking logs. And if for any reason, really, I put this on the screen is if for any reason there's a quality issue with that produce, you have 24 hours to notify the vendor, which is Seashore in this case, in order to credit your account and ensure that those PAL monies are still available to you. So similarly, you know, it's treated as regular money, but make sure that the folks, we have Miriam and Linda here who are the points of contact for folks who are newer at the SFA. Just make sure you save these folks in your Rolodex so you can make sure that we are not losing those money. So these are the points of contact here. Any additional questions about favors or DoD Fresh, you can reach out to me directly for assistance, and my email, of course, will be shared with you all as well. I think so now I believe we're going into another Q&A session. So I'll pass it off to my colleague Alex for that.
All right, thank you so much, Nick. Okay, I'm just looking at all the questions that we have. Okay, I guess let's talk about breakfast first. All right, so this was a comment that came in. One thing I've never really understood regarding breakfast is that we cannot charge paid families for breakfast, but there's no OSSI funding that makes up the difference. As a result, breakfast is a huge losing proposition for the SFA. Can you explain that? The small amount that OSSI provides to help with is not nearly enough. So yes, OSSI provides a little bit of funding. Right now it's 20 cents per breakfast meal, and we know that doesn't make up the difference. I don't actually know the reasoning behind how this legislation was made and created. I just know that the HSA legislation puts the onus on the SFA to make up that difference. So this is another huge push for universal free meals. And I will just highlight that if council has a hearing on universal free meals, they do ask for public testimony, and that gives all of you the opportunity to testify in front of council and give your opinions, whether for or against. And this would be a huge reason for passing universal free meals, because it would take the onus off the SFA and it would put it on DC government to make up that difference for breakfast and for lunch. All right, let's go to the BIC waiver slide. I see a couple, I see a question on the BIC waiver. And I think it's slide 49. Okay, so the question is a BIC waiver needed only if the models listed on the application orchard are used? That's BIC, breakfast in the cafeteria, and grab and go. So this question is, we get this question all the time, and especially during application season, especially when we're getting waivers in. So the HSA requirement is that BIC must be served in elementary schools. There is a BIC waiver available, but it is only available for elementary schools. So if you are a middle school or a high school, there's no waiver available. You have to serve an alternative breakfast serving model. If you are an elementary school, that alternative breakfast serving model has to be breakfast in the classroom. This waiver is just for elementary schools if they don't want to serve BIC for whatever reason. So the example here is that potentially they do breakfast in the classroom for some grades and grab and go for others, which we actually see a lot in elementary schools. You might have breakfast in the classroom for grades pre-K through 3, and then 4 and 5 do a grab and go. So if you are doing this model, you need a BIC waiver for grades 4 and 5. Because the rule is that if you are in elementary school, you have to serve breakfast in the classroom. So 4 and 5, while alternative, it's not BIC and you need a waiver for that. And then if you are a middle school or high school, there's no waiver. You just have to do the alternative breakfast serving model unless you're over 75% participation. And then, or under 40% free and reduced, those are the two exceptions. And then there's a question, if the CEP threshold is lower, to 25%. Would the requirement for alternative breakfast serving models also change down to 25%? There's no indication that it will. Remember, the CEP threshold is federal, and then the BIC threshold is local. So potentially, DC government may align to the federal level, but there's no indication that that could happen. And if it does, of course, we'll let you know. But at this point in time, they wouldn't. If one changes, it doesn't necessarily mean the other would change. The next question that I have here for alternative breakfast serving models, so breakfast after the bell, if school begins at 9 and we serve breakfast in the cafeteria from 8:30 to 9:30, does that count as before and after the bell as it accounts for latecomers? Okay, so we also get this question a lot. So let me see if it is. Okay, and so the requirement, it actually might not be listed, the specific HSA requirement, I don't think is actually listed on here, but that's okay. And so the HSA requirement is that breakfast must be served after the bell. You can start it early. So in this specific example, their school starts at 9 and they want to serve breakfast from 8:30 to 9:30. That's allowable, but the actual time for breakfast has to also be after the bell. So what you can't do is have all the kids go to the cafeteria if that's allowed, per you're over 75% participation, or let's say you have grab and go set up. You can't pull that away at 9 and then tell everyone that's late they have to go to the cafeteria. You have to have a designated time for breakfast that's after the bell. So if you are in, let's say, a classroom and you start breakfast at 8:30, and school starts at 9, but kids actually have up until 9:15 as designated breakfast time, that counts. Often what we see in schools is they have a breakfast time before school starts, all the alternative breakfast serving models go away, and late kids get funneled to the cafeteria. That's not sufficient. You have to have designated breakfast after the start of the school day.
Hey, Alex, can I?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, come off mute. Ask your question or
sorry.
clarification.
So I'm the one who asked the question. And so we serve breakfast in the cafeteria. That is our serving area. So we're an adult school. So we serve breakfast in the cafeteria. And right now we do from 8 to 9:30, and we have a second breakfast. However, a second breakfast at like from 10:15 to 10:45. However, if we needed more classroom time and needed to take away that second breakfast, would serving the food from 8:30 to 9:30 be okay?
So, so I'll the second chance breakfast is great. We actually don't see that in DC super often. So, what Monique just described is they have a separate period where it's second chance breakfast. And so instruction stops and kids have the opportunity to get breakfast. So that is an alternative breakfast serving model. If you took that away, what you would have to do is make sure that if the kids are eating in the cafeteria, they would have to have time allotted to that. So if your school day starts at 9, instruction couldn't also start at 9. It would have to start at like 9:15. And then you can, of course, keep the cafeteria open later. But you couldn't have school day start at 9, instructions start at 9. They have to have that time built in if you take away that second chance breakfast. But let me just reiterate that if you take away that second chance breakfast at 10:45, you want to make sure you're still in compliance with HSA. So you would be exempt from this regulation if your percentage of participation is over 75%, or your free reduced rate is under 40. If your free reduced rate's over 40 and you don't have 75% breakfast participation, you wouldn't be able to just solely do cafeteria feeding. You would need that second chance. Second chance can be in the cafeteria at 10:45, or you would have to do like a grab and go or something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, let me go down. All right, let me just go through some of these more questions and see what I might have missed. Martita, I see a couple notes from you talking about being reimbursed at the caloric-free rate, and it doesn't meet the cost for most of us. Obviously, we know food cost has gone up greatly, and the reimbursement rate, while a lot higher last year, has gone down. We've gotten a couple rounds of SCA funds that have hopefully helped fill that gap. But yes, that we do understand that. And it come closer, we'd still be losing money on every breakfast we serve. Okay, do we need a waiver if you serve both elementary and middle school in one building? So if you have a scenario where you have elementary and middle school in one building, you would only, and let's say you want to do grab and go for 3 through 8, because they're all entering at the same place for the grades, that an elementary school, you would need a waiver for that. If for some reason you're not serving BIC in elementary, you need a waiver. I answered the RCCI question. You are not required to comply. If you have 5th grade to middle school, if your 5th grade's middle school, then that would count as middle school. It's however you're defining elementary and middle. So you wouldn't need the waiver, but you would have to make sure you're doing an alternative breakfast serving model. I see another question on here, unrelated to the section, but just as a reminder, we're going to share the recording and we'll share the slides out with folks. Okay, I will move on to our next section. I'll do another scan of the chat just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and then we'll have a final wrap-up Q&A for any final questions. Can be even unrelated to things we've talked about today before we wrap up. All right, Kendra, I think you're up.
Thank you, Alex. And now let's get into civil rights. So we will be doing a brief overview of civil rights and some updates at OSSI. However, this is not sufficient as meeting the required civil rights training that individuals need each year. All personnel working on civil rights will need 1 hour of training each year. We have a training available on our website, or you can use other resources such as ICN, which is the Institute of Child Nutrition. So what are civil rights? Civil rights are the rights of personal liberty guaranteed by the 13th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution and Acts of Congress. The term civil rights is not to be confused with the Equal Employment Opportunity, also known as EEO, as these terms are not interchangeable. Civil rights consist of 3 major concepts: stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. Now let's define the 3 major concepts. First is stereotyping, which is the preconceived beliefs of or oversimplified generalizations about a particular group. Next is prejudice, which is a set of rigid and unfavorable attitudes toward a particular group that is formed without considering facts. And last, we have discrimination, which is the practice of treating people differently because of how we have them grouped in our minds according to our prejudices. Why are civil rights important in child nutrition programs? Civil rights are important in child nutrition programs to understand civil rights related laws, regulations, procedures, and directives, and to ensure benefits of child nutrition programs are made available to all eligible participants in a non-discriminatory manner. Okay, now we're going to move on to the civil rights complaint procedure. So civil rights, the complaint procedure requirements were sent out in Beyond the Tray newsletter but we will do an overview of that here. All applicants and participants must be advised at the service delivery point of their right to file a complaint, how to file a complaint, and the complaint procedures. A complaint must be filed no later than 180 days from the date of the alleged discrimination. All complaints alleging discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, sex, or disability, either written or verbal, must be processed within 90 days of receipt. All complaints, written or verbal, must be forwarded to the appropriate regional or Food and Nutrition Service, also known as FNS, Office of Civil Rights, also known as OCR, director, unless an approved state complaint procedure is in place. Anonymous complaints will be handled as any other complaints to the extent feasible based on available information. A copy of the civil rights complaint must be forwarded to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, OSSE, Civil Rights Complaint Coordinator within 3 calendar days of the initial report. And this last bullet point that I just mentioned regarding forwarding a copy of the OSSE Civil Rights Complaint, regarding forwarding a copy to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, OSSE Civil Rights Complaint Coordinator, was added to previous guidance. Everyone should ensure that their civil rights complaint procedures include sending a copy of any complaints that you receive to OSSE as well. Additionally, you would want to log the complaint. Civil rights complaints must be maintained in a log separate from other program complaints. The complaint log must contain only information regarding civil rights complaints, regardless of whether or not the state agency processes its own complaints of discrimination. Maintain confidentiality regarding the details of the complaint. And further, the OSSE updated civil rights complaint procedure template can be found on the Health and Wellness Civil Rights page of the OSSE website, which is linked here on the slide. Next, we'll talk about the translation of documents. The free and reduced priced meal or farm applications and household letters have been updated with the new non-discrimination statement and are available in English, Spanish, Amharic, Chinese, French, Korean, and Vietnamese. Instructions for families on how to fill out the farm application have been included as well. So the OSSE updated translated documents can be found on the Health and Wellness Student Eligibility, Farm Applications, and Direct Certification page, which is also linked here on the slide. And as my colleague Lizette mentioned earlier during her walkthrough of the OSSE website, on the student eligibility page, you can see here a screenshot of the attachments that I just mentioned in the 6 different languages. New and Justice for All posters are coming soon. So continue using the old one for now. We have a ton of old ones here at the office, so if you need them, just let us know. But do not use the ones that have Lady Liberty on them. Those are too old. OSSE and USDA do not have an ETA or estimated time of arrival on the printed copies of the new posters and when they would be available. So using either version is allowable for this year. You can print out the new poster from USDA's website, which is linked on the slide as well, until printed copies are made available. Okay, next we're going to go into training requirements. So civil rights training is required for all individuals involved in all levels of administration of programs that receive federal financial assistance under federal laws, regulations, instructions, policies, and other guidance. State agencies are responsible for training local agencies and subrecipients on an annual basis. Local agencies are responsible for training their staff and subrecipients on an annual basis. New employees must receive civil rights training before participating in program activities. Teachers serving meals are not required to attend civil rights training as long as they are receiving civil rights training as part of their annual teacher training. And lastly, volunteers, if any, must also receive training appropriate for their roles and responsibilities. Here, sorry about that. Here are the requirements for civil rights training. The OSCE training has been updated to include customer service and conflict resolution. So the civil rights training must include the following: assurances, public notification requirements, complaints of discrimination, civil rights training, race and ethnicity data collection, limited English proficiency, or LEP, disability compliance, compliance reviews, resolution of noncompliance, and as I mentioned, conflict resolution and customer service. So OSCE updated civil rights training can be found on the Health and Wellness Training and Resources page of our OSCE website. And the link to the civil rights training is here on the slide. SFAs must keep track of all civil rights training along with their professional standards. Okay, I'm going to invite the rest of the program specialist team to join me now for our final section, which is going to be quick hits.
Thank you for that information regarding civil rights, Kendra. And I just wanted to add one note. Kendra let us know that we do need to we can print the Injustice for All posters from the USDA website. We just want to make sure that the requirement is that the poster is 11 by 17 when you're printing it from the website. Okay, so let's get into these quick hits. As you all may be aware, your SFA will undergo an administrative review once every 3 to 4 years. So today we wanted to prepare you all by sharing some quick hits regarding findings that we see while conducting the on-site portion of the review. Let's hear from some program specialists and some common findings that they see in the field. First up, reimbursable meal signage. Ed, can you kick us off with what you've seen here and how SFAs can get in front of this issue?
Certainly, Lizette. A great way to get ahead of this issue is first determine what meal service you're implementing. So for one of the schools doing offer versus serve, just making sure that you have offer versus serve signage that matches the appropriate meal service type that you're doing. And serve as well. If you're a serve school where each one of the components the students receive. They don't have to ask for it. Make sure that that signage is appropriate. Oh, I'm sorry. Another one is secondly, make sure the signage is posted at the beginning of the service line so students are aware of what to expect and cafeteria workers can ensure all meal components are being provided.
Thanks, Ed. And a follow-up question, where can SFAs find reimbursable meal signage?
A great question. They can find the signage on the OSSI website or the Institute of Child Nutrition, ICN, or the USDA food and service sites. All have resources that you can locate information.
Awesome, thanks for that, Ed. Okay, next up, let's talk Buy American provision compliance. Kendra, what has been the biggest issue with compliance here, and how can SFAs avoid a finding?
Thanks, Lizette. Great question. So the biggest issue with compliance is SFAs not knowing that there needs to be a documented process done in order to justify purchasing non-domestic foods. So there are limited exceptions to the Buy American provision, which allow for the purpose of foods not meeting the domestic standard in circumstances when the use of domestic food is truly not practicable. And the SFAs must keep documentation justifying the limited exceptions.
Great, and in regards to that documentation for exceptions, do we need to approve the exemption or the exception log?
No, so the SFA approves the exemption. OSSI does not need to approve the exemption. However, OSSI will review the documentation during administrative reviews.
Great, and the last question about that, how do you recommend SFAs track exemptions?
SFAs can track exemptions using a simple spreadsheet such as Microsoft Excel.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Kendra. Shanice, I'll turn it over to you. Can you share with us the rule regarding posting health inspection reports?
Sure. Schools must obtain a minimum of 2 food safety inspections during each school year. The SFA must post a copy of the most recent food safety inspection in a publicly visible location at the site. During our school site visits, we've seen frequently that the inspections are posted in areas that are not visible to the public.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that is, what would an SFA do if they have not received two health inspections in the school year?
They can reach out to DOH or they can reach out to their program specialist.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Kendra. So Kendra, I'll have you talk local wellness policy. What are some things you've seen during the offsite portion of the review, and what can SFAs do to ensure compliance?
Thank you, Lizette. So I've seen local wellness policies that did not meet the minimum federal and local requirements. Some SFAs have used the old local wellness policy template that OSSI did have available, which contained some insufficiencies. And so SFAs can ensure compliance by using the new local wellness policy template, which is available in the Orchard download library, in the library of downloads and templates, and making sure that it is filled out completely to meet the federal and local requirements.
Great, thank you for that. And Kendra, I'll have you talk production records. So two of the biggest infractions we've seen centered on production records are incomplete production records and not documenting meal substitutions. Can you shed some light on these issues and how SFAs can work to ensure that production records are completed daily and accurately?
Sure. Production records must show how the meals offered contribute to the required food components and quantities for each age grade group that is being served every day. Any meal substitutions should be documented on the production record so that it accurately shows what was actually served. And production records should be completed throughout the meal service and maintained every day. So at a minimum, the production record should include, the name of the items, recipe or item numbers, portion sizes, the number of planned portions, the number of actual servings, the number of leftovers, and the component contribution amount.
Great, thank you for that information. Production records are super important. And lastly, I will toss it to Megan to discuss public disclosure menus and nutritional content posted online. So Megan, what's the issue here and how can SFAs ensure compliance?
Thanks, Lizette. So part of the public disclosure requirement of the Healthy Schools Act, HSA, requires that the food service providers to post the breakfast and lunch menus, as well as the nutritional content of each menu item on their website. During our last administrative review period, we experienced many SFAs falling short of this requirement.
Great, thank you. And this is so important for SFAs to not only ensure compliance on their websites, but work with their vendors to make sure that they're providing this information for you. Well, thank you to the program specialist team for providing this valuable insight and getting our SFAs ready for an upcoming administrative review. And we will now go into our final Q&A session. So if you have questions regarding any of the topics that we have discussed today, please feel free to go ahead and continue to drop those in the chat. And we will be fielding those questions and responding to them as they come in. I will turn it over to Alex for our Q&A session, our final Q&A session.
All right, thanks, y'all. All right, there's just a couple more questions in the chat. So a couple of the questions on resources and sites. I know we've talked about ICN a couple times throughout this training. So the OSCE website has a lot of good resources, but ICN has a ton of resources and they have a lot of translated resources. So one of the requests was for the civil rights training in Spanish. I dropped it in this chat. At the end of this training, whenever we send the follow-up notes, we send out a one-pager of all the resources that we talked about today. That will be really quick links for you all. So we'll make sure all of these resources are included. Where to find the Injustice for All poster, the ICN website, the OSCE website, and I have a couple of other in the zero waste flyer. So we'll make sure you guys get all those in like a quick link format. So it will be very easy. And then, okay, when we say new LWP template, new as in what date? I don't know the exact date. It's at least a year old. It came out last year, I think in the spring of last year, maybe even in the winter. An easy way to know if you have the new template is it's very colorful. So if you look at your template and it's in black and white, it's probably not the most updated one. You don't have to use it. There's no requirement. The most updated one just ensures that you have all of the federal regulations, all of the updated HSA regulations. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to your program specialist. We do require you to upload the LWP as part of your NSLP application. And so the program specialist team can also be looking during that just to make sure you have the most updated one. If they don't, they're not going to require you to fix it, but our recommendation is to fix it before you have an audit, because otherwise, if you're missing any of the provisions, it could potentially get flagged. Can you expand on what nutritional information we need to have on our website? I believe that the requirement says the nutritional content of each item that's served, but I'll get the actual definition and send that out to you all. Often we see the menu items listed and then nutrient information that we require for an audit, such as calories, saturated fat, and sodium. And then sometimes programs will have a lot more information, but I'll pull the exact definition and make sure you guys all have that. Will we receive new OVS serve posters from OSSI? We don't have a ton. I think we might just have OVS posters if you guys want to come pick them up. But OVS posters are posted on our website. So if you want to download it and print it on your own, you can print it. There's no requirement on the size. We are planning to print more hopefully this year. And so when we have more, we'll send them out to you guys and then you can come pick them up from us. Okay, as stated previously, DOH inspection reports should be posted publicly for view. Where do you suggest these reports be posted? We see them most often posted right outside of the cafeteria. And so sometimes we see them inside of the cafeteria and that's not technically publicly posted. So my recommendation would be right outside of the cafeteria door or wherever you might have menus posted. You can also post the DOH health inspection. The goal of that legislation is to make sure if anybody is coming or has a question, they can just go look for themselves and easily be able to see that report. Do you have serve posters or will you get more serve posters? I think what we just have here is OVS. I will find that out and I'll send it out and it'll be on a first come first serve basis. Whoever needs posters can drive down and the program specialist can run it out to you. But I think we might just have OVS on site. I'll follow up with that one. Okay, does anyone have a sample of the new LWP policy as of yesterday? Oh, sorry. That was complete. Oh, sorry. LWP template that was completed successfully. Okay, Tiffany's asking if anyone has an LWP template that was completed successfully. So if anyone wants to share, she's put her email right into the chat here, and I'm gonna highlight schools that especially had an AR this year that has completed corrective action. If you had it, or if you had an AR and didn't have any LWP findings, please feel free to share it with Tiffany as a good example of what one can look like. The website for looking up DOH inspection reports was malfunctioning as of yesterday. Any idea when that will be working again? I don't. It always seems like the second application season opens, the DOH inspection website goes down. We flagged it for them, and hopefully for all of our sakes, it will be up and running soon. There's a question, so they no longer need to be posted near the serving line. I'm assuming that has to do with the health inspection. The requirement is that it needs to be posted publicly. My recommendation is to post it in the cafeteria near the serving line. I feel like that's the easiest and cleanest place where it can go. All right, I think someone initiated a poll, so feel free to vote if y'all want to. And then we have another request to share a stellar LWP. Since there's a couple requests from that, maybe we can see, look through past reviews we've done, and if we find one, we'll ask that SFA if we can share it out widely with you all. Yeah, we have a couple requests for that coming in. Or if anyone wants to volunteer theirs, that would be great. Oh, sorry, that question was for OVS or serve posters. Thanks for that clarification, Deanna. No, OVS and serve posters need to be posted where food's being served. Everywhere food's being served. So near the serving line, if you have a grab and go station, it needs to be there. The point of an OVS poster is so that kids can see what is required when they're picking up a meal. So if you have meals in the classroom, you should have an OVS or serve poster in the classroom so kids know what a compliant meal looks like. Okay, Martita shared their LWP. Thanks so much for sharing that. And then, sorry, I mentioned outside of the kitchen that I thought it was related to health inspections, not to the OVS. So OVS should be posted where meals are being served. Okay, so this question is on around documentation around contracts, specifically the My American provision for admin reviews. So typically when we do an administrative review, the procurement review is done on the year prior. And if you're using a new vendor, do you need to reach back for contracts from their former vendor to make sure the Buy American provision was included? So here's the rule about keeping documents. Documents need to be kept for 3 years plus the current year. So if you have your last year's procurement documentation. Everyone should have that already on file, and you need to hold it for 3 years past when that contract ends. So yes, you may have to reach back out to the vendor, but you should make sure you have that documentation. So when you sign a new contract, make sure you keep all of your procurement documentation. Once that contract ends, you have to keep it on site for 3 years. If you're using the Aussie template, Buy American was included. So you don't have to worry. If you're using our templates, you have the Buy American version in there. All right. Well, Lizette, you want to talk about next steps before we go into our breakout rooms?
Sure do, Alex. Thank you so much. So we have come to the end of our information giving session here today. I'm so glad you can join us. Some next steps are, please make sure that your annual NSLP application is submitted by July 31st. As Alex mentioned, it is application season, and we want to make sure that you submit your application by July 31st. As some of you have been around for some time know, it is a very back and forth process, and we get our first iteration July 31st. So please make sure you have submitted that if you have it in draft, and if you have not started it, please start it and be sure to submit it by July 31st. Second thing, procurement. If you've gone out to bid for with a new vendor, make sure that you save all associated documents, as Alex mentioned. The requirement is that you do save it for 3 years plus the current year, because we do review that when we conduct the administrative review. And also make sure that you are uploading that new contract as part of your NSLP application. And last but not least, part of the requirements for folks who interact with the NSLP program is that they have a specific amount of hours based on how they interact with the program. That is known as professional standards. You can get these hours by obtaining them various different ways. The ICN website has always been a good resource. However, today, participating in this training counts towards your annual required professional standards hours. So make sure that you have a tracker for this year. Again, a tracker can be something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet that shares the name of the training, how many hours you attended, and please feel free to use the slide deck to train your staff as well.
All right, thank you, Lizette. So we're going to go into our breakout rooms here in just a moment. We were working quickly behind the scenes, putting everyone in breakout rooms. For some reason, if you had joined via link and we couldn't see your email address and what school you're associated with, you've been put in either mine or Lizette's room. So most people are in a room with their program specialist. Some people might be in a room with either me or Lizette, but we can still answer questions even if you are in the exact room. So we're going to put you in those rooms now. Once we're done, you're welcome to leave from there. We won't come back to the main meeting. So take as much time you want with your program specialist. Feel free to ask them anything. All right.
And
Hit it,
Alex,
Nick.
I also want to add, if you do not get put into a breakout room, we will work to identify your SFA, because we do have some folks that have joined the training and we do not know specifically which SFA they're associated with.
Yep, they've been put in either yours or mine.
Hi, Sierra and Evren. It looks like you both are maybe on your phone or some sort of device that doesn't allow you to go into breakout rooms.
I am on the phone, yes.
Okay. Let me see just a second. This is going. Just a moment. Let me put Thomas in. And Thomas, I should have put you in breakout room 3. Are you able to accept? I think Everin and Sierra, since you both are on your phones, Everin, what school are you with?
With Harmony DC.
Okay. So I can drop Megan is your program specialist, your point of contact for Aussie. I can drop her email in the chat for you. Unfortunately, unless you switch devices, I would be unable to um, put you in this room, it looks like. Just a moment. So you're free to go. I'm gonna drop her email, like I said, in the chat.
Okay.
And then Sierra, what school are you with?
Ingenuity Prep.
Okay. Okay. Your point of contact is your program specialist is Kendra Roche. So I will drop her email in the chat as well. And then you're free to go. So feel free to reach out to them directly. But again, I can't. I apologize. It looks like I just can't put you all in on your phone. So you both are free to go. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then Juanita, what school are you with? Actually, it looks like I had you in Kendra's room. Let me see if I can reassign you. Elsie, I'm gonna reassign you to the room just a moment. So just move over when you are prompted to the breakout room.
Thank you.
Hi, Thomas. I'm gonna reassign you to Ed's room just so it'll prompt you again. Oh, looks like you might be on your phone or something, which is fine, but I can't, excuse me, put you in a breakout room, so I will just Ed is your point of contact.
Right.
So unless you have, I just I'm unable to put you in his room. So you are free to go. I can drop his email in the chat if you don't already have it. But you are free to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Hi, Latasha. It looks like you got kicked out, so let me just reassign you to
Thank you.
Kendra's room. Hi, Shania. Let me just double check where. Thank you. Megan's room. Let me just reassign.